Not only is America's racial wealth gap increasing, if unaddressed, it's actually going to wipe out wealth for communities of color in less than 4 decades. That's the finding of a shocking new report called Road to Zero Wealth: How the Racial Wealth Divide is Hollowing Out America's Middle Class. Now joining us is one of the study's co-authors, Diedrich Asante Mohammed. He's a senior fellow at Prosperity Now, where he heads up the Racial Wealth Divide Initiative.
Black wealth has been going down since 2001. Latino wealth has been going down rapidly with the Great Recession. And that if we look over the last 30 years, from 1983 to 2013, we see that there's actually a steady degrade of Black and Latino wealth. And if things keep going from the same way it has been from 1983 to 2013, we see that Black wealth will see a median Black wealth of 0 by 2053 and a median Latino wealth of 0 by 2073. And during those time periods, white wealth will continue to increase, though not quickly, but will continue to increase if things keep going where they have been between 1983 and 2013.
Black men and black women. The warning is clear and it's urgent. The Road to Zero Wealth report projects that by the year 2053, the median black household wealth will fall to zero. Zero. Meanwhile, white household wealth will continue to climb, projected to surpass $137,000. Latino households, though stronger for now, are on track to hit zero by 2073. Now, this is just not numbers on a page. It is a future where our children and grandchildren inherit nothing but debt. A future where the black community is permanently locked out of opportunity. And before I get into this report, I just want to be clear. This crisis did not happen by accident. Slavery and Jim Crow stripped wealth before it even conformed.
Homer Plessy was born free in New Orleans, Louisiana, on March 17, 1863, just 3 months after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. Plessy versus Ferguson was a critical development in African American history. The court's separate but equal doctrine provided Southern states with constitutional cover as they passed a profusion of segregation ordinances during the first few decades of the new century. It also provided Northern states with a rationalization for continuing discriminatory policies in housing, education, employment, and policing. Plessy marked the beginning of the Jim Crow era, a period bounded by the 1896 ruling and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. During these years, legal segregation and disenfranchisement defined the parameters of black citizenship and circumscribed African Americans' unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But Plessy was more than a starting point for a new historical moment. It was also an end point, the culmination of a concerted effort on the part of white Southerners to exercise total authority over African Americans, an ability they had lost when slavery was abolished. The story of Jim Crow, therefore, doesn't begin with Plessy, but rather with the political movement that swept across the South during the last quarter of the 19th century. This movement, which Plessy affirmed, laid the groundwork for white supremacist rule in the South. Jim Crow, like slavery, was about power. The power to control black workers.
Housing discrimination and redlining denied black families access to the #1 wealth builder in America, home ownership.
Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism. To understand it better, let's look at what life was like for Kevin and Jamal's grandparents. Decades after the Civil War, many government agencies started to draw maps dividing cities into sections that were either desirable or undesirable for investment. This practice was called redlining, and it usually blocked off entire black neighborhoods from access to private and public investment. Banks and insurance companies used these maps for decades to deny black people loans and other services based purely on race. Historically speaking, owning a home and getting a college education is the easiest way for an American family to build wealth. But when Jamal's grandparents wanted to buy a house, the banks refused because they lived in a neighborhood that was redlined. So Jamal's grandparents were not able to buy a home, and because colleges could prevent them from attending through legal segregation, their options for higher education were really scarce. Kevin's grandparents, on the other hand, got a low-interest loan to buy their first house and got accepted into a handful of top universities, which traditionally only accepted white students. This opened up a wealth of opportunities that they were able to pass on to their kids and grandkids. Even as late as the 1980s, an investigation into the Atlanta real estate market showed that banks were more willing to lend to low-income white families than to middle or upper-income African-American families. As a result, today, for every $100 of wealth held by a white family, black families have $5.04. A 2017 study confirms that redlining is still affecting home values in major cities like Chicago today. This explains how Kevin and Jamal inherited vastly different circumstances.
Federal programs like the GI Bill and Social Security benefited white households disproportionately, leaving many black veterans and workers excluded.
When World War II finally ended, millions of American veterans returned home, eager for stability, prosperity, and a chance to rebuild their lives. The GI Bill promised just that in free education, access to home ownership, and economic opportunities more generous than anything the nation had ever seen. It was a revolutionary law that basically reshaped America's middle class, creating success stories that continue to inspire. However, beneath this celebrated legacy are countless black veterans who were promised prosperity but only faced the painful reality of discrimination and lost opportunities. So join us today while we discuss the untold story of how the GI Bill left black servicemen behind.
And in modern times, tax cuts and policies for the wealthy have widened the gap even further. Between 1983 and 2016, black family wealth fell by more than 50%, while white wealth rose by 33%. By 2016, nearly 37% of black families had zero or negative net worth. That is not a disparity, that is economic apartheid. But that's not even scratching the surface of what's going on in our own community. The divide is sharp. Single black men hold a median wealth of about $10,100, while single black women just $1,700. And among those over 50, black women hold about $44,000, while white women hold more than $214,000. This means that while the road to zero wealth predicts collapse for households overall, black women, especially single black women, will feel it first. And the only way that the black community can dig ourselves out of this deep hole is marriage. Marriage is more than love. It is one of the strongest wealth-building institutions in America. Married couples combine incomes, buy homes, share benefits, and pass down assets. Single households, especially those led by women, face greater financial strain. When marriage declines in the black community, wealth declines. And when wealth declines, marriage becomes harder to sustain. The two reinforce each other. Now, it wouldn't be a proper video if we didn't take a look at the statistics. Pew Research 2023 ACS report shows that 36% of black men are married, 29% of black women are married, compared to 59% of non-black adults. But black women are more likely to be divorced, separated, or widowed, 25% versus 15% of black men, and less likely to remarry. Nearly half of all black adults have never married at all. However, the patterns of who marries whom are shifting. In 2014, about 15% of married black men had non-black wives. By 2022, that number rose to 21%, more than 1 in 5. Black women, however, remain overwhelmingly endogamous. 87% marry black men and only 13% marry out. The reality is stark. Other races of men marry black women at the lowest rates of all. Only 0.5% of white men in America are married to black women. So when some black women say, "We'll just marry out," The truth is this: marriage requires two people saying yes, and outside of the black community, those men are not saying yes in large numbers. So the effect is clear. Black men's marriage rates are being sustained, even lifted by interracial marriage. Black women's rates are not. And I say all that knowing that the common narrative and myth in the black community is that black men don't want marriage, but the data says otherwise. A 2020 study found that nearly 50% of older black women reported not wanting to have a partner at all, compared to just 22% of black men. In 2024, Pew Research found that more men are more likely than women to say they want marriage and children in the future. So not only are black men marrying more often, they are also the ones expressing greater desire for marriage. And contrary to the stereotypes, black men are positioned well for marriage readiness. So to put things in simpler terms, across 12 categories tied to family stability, black men lead in 9, including income, low debt, health, and marriage rates. So yes, black men are being chosen by black women and increasingly by women of other races for those particular reasons mentioned. But here's where we must also confront an outdated and damaging idea. Back in 1987, sociologist William Julius Wilson argued that high unemployment, incarceration, and poverty made black men less marriageable. That phrase has been echoed for decades and often used to explain the declining marriage rates among black women. Yet today, the data no longer supports it. Black men earn more than black women, they make up a greater share of high earners, they own more businesses, and they are marrying across racial lines at higher rates. In fact, the education gap between black men and women is just 7.3%. So when every other group of men can lag behind their women in degrees and still marry, why is the same pattern used to call black men less marriageable? That talking point is not only outdated, it's biased. And critics often point to life expectancy. Yes, black men die younger than black women, but here's the truth. Black women live longer, but spend more years in poor health and needing assistance. Black men live fewer years overall, but have more active and independent years before passing. This is why nursing homes are filled with black women and not black men. And long-term care is very expensive, and it also drains family wealth. So when detractors say, why marry men who don't live as long? The answer is simple. Black men bring more active years, less dependency, and less financial drain. Life expectancy isn't just about length, it's about quality of life. We are a couple of months away from 2026, and the projections for the black community in regards to marriage are as follows. As I stated earlier, black men's marriage rates remain steady, or they are actually rising from 36% to 38 to 40% in most cases. And those increases are fueled by interracial marriage opportunities. Black women's marriage rates are projected to fall from 29% to either 28 or 26%, given divorce rates, fewer remarriages, and limited demand outside of the race. So in other words, the gap will widen. And if current trends hold, more black men will build families with non-black women, while more black women remain single. Wealth will not only decline, it will fragment. The traditional black family structure will weaken. And this is not about loyalty. It is about economics, demographics, and demand. Getting back to the report, the Road to Zero Wealth laid out solutions: baby bonds, a wealth tax, equity audits, and reparations. But under administrations like Trump's, most of these solutions are unlikely. Baby bonds were watered down into Trump accounts and are now considered regressive because they benefit the wealthy. Wealth tax, not only ignored, but massive tax cuts for the rich were passed. Policy audits for racial equity, none were conducted. Reparations, no movement whatsoever. So if the federal government won't save us, what can we do? We must turn to tangible, community-driven solutions. Number 1, targeted careers. Aim for industries with high wages and growth: professional services, healthcare leadership, tech, advanced manufacturing, and skilled trades. Build mentorship pipelines, certifications, and apprenticeships to get there. Number 2, demand fair pay. Push for pay transparency, standardized promotion criteria, and use unions, associations, and networks to negotiate from strength. Number 3, scale black-owned businesses. Pool capital through credit unions and investment clubs. Use supplier diversity programs to grow beyond sole proprietorships and mentor the next wave of entrepreneurs. Number 4, increase home ownership. Leverage down payment assistance, VA loans, USDA loans, and try our best to avoid predatory lending. We need to teach our people to turn housing into equity. Number 5, practice group economics. Consciously support black-owned businesses, black banks, and black credit unions. Keep our dollars circulating in our own neighborhoods. And one of the most important, but perhaps the most overlooked tool is life insurance. Only 56% of Black Americans have it, compared to 68% of white Americans. And many of those policies are underfunded. That is a missed opportunity on a massive scale. For example, a healthy 30-year-old can buy a $500,000 policy for less than $50 a month. That payout could pay off mortgages, wipe out debt, fund college, or seed a family business. Without it, families are left with funeral costs, medical bills, and estate taxes that erase whatever little wealth existed. Life insurance must become a standard part of every Black household's financial plan, not just for survival, but as a wealth-building tool. And finally, we must protect progress with smart policies, support refundable tax credits, enforce fair lending laws, defend anti-poverty programs proven to work, teach financial literacy in schools so every young person understands credit, investing, and insurance. And lastly, ensure Black women, who have the highest labor force participation among women, have targeted support for stable, high-quality jobs. This is a call to action. The future is at stake. Wealth is collapsing, marriage is shifting, families are under strain. But projections are not destiny, they are warnings. If we embrace the tangible solutions, targeted careers, fair pay, entrepreneurship, home ownership, group economics, life insurance, and if we confront marriage realities with honesty and courage, then we can still build wealth, still build families, and still secure a future. But before I go, let me address the lies directly. When people say Black men marry outside of their race because we hate our mothers or dislike Black women, that is nothing but shaming language. The truth is simpler. Black men still want marriage, but when nearly half of older Black women report not wanting a partner, the choice is narrow. So for Black men who want families, marrying outside the race often becomes the only option. And other races of women are willing to say yes when too many of our own are saying no. So that is not hate, that is reality. And also, here's what must be said plainly. While Black men are competing with every other race of men in business, education, and marriage markets, all races of men are fighting the same battles to earn, to lead, to build. We should not have to compete against our own women just to prove that we are not the enemy. Too often, myths are recycled, that Black men are deadbeat fathers, that more of us are in prison than in college, that Black women are the only ones building wealth. Every one of those lies has been debunked for decades, yet they continue to resurface even from platforms that claim to promote Black marriage. And while some Black women cling to those myths, other women, white, Latina, Asian, are stepping forward to marry the very Black men who are disqualified at home. The damage is not that Black men are running away, but that too many of our own sisters are pushing us away and then blaming us for the results. Black men and Black women, things cannot move forward if half of us believe lies about the other half. Black men are not your enemy. Black men are not running from marriage. We are running towards it, often with whoever will run with us. So again, the road to zero wealth warned us of what's coming. The work we do now, rejecting lies, rebuilding unity, and embracing the truth, will decide whether that prophecy becomes a reality or whether we write a different story. The choice is yours. The time is now. So instead of arguing amongst one another, we got work to do. Peace.